The Chicago winter cut through the thin walls of the apartment like a blade, and Maya Chen pulled her oversized sweater tighter around her shoulders as she sat at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of lukewarm coffee. The radiator clanked and hissed in the corner, a sound that had become the soundtrack to her life in this cramped two-bedroom on the south side. Outside, the wind howled between the buildings, rattling the windows that never quite fit their frames properly. She'd been living here for 3 months now, ever since she'd graduated from community college with her associate's degree in social work. It wasn't much, but it was supposed to be temporary, just until she could save enough to get her own place. The plan had been simple: split rent with her older brother Derek, keep her head down, and work toward building something better. But plans, Maya had learned, rarely survived contact with reality. The front door slammed hard enough to shake the whole apartment, and Maya's stomach clenched. She knew that particular sound. It was Derek's angry slam, not his tired-from-work slam or his frustrated-with-the-world slam. This was the slam that meant someone was about to pay for whatever had gone wrong in his day. "Maya!" His voice boomed through the thin walls, already carrying that edge that made her feel 12 years old again. "Where the hell are you?" She considered not answering, maybe slipping into her room and pretending to be asleep, but the apartment was too small for that kind of hiding. Besides, she'd learned long ago that ignoring Derek only made things worse. "Kitchen!" she called back, her voice steady despite the familiar flutter of anxiety in her chest. Derek appeared in the doorway, his dark hair disheveled and his work uniform, the navy blue shirt with Morrison's Auto Shop embroidered on the pocket, stained with grease and what looked like coffee. At 28, he still carried himself with the swagger of the high school football player he'd once been, but there was something harder around the edges now, something that had crystallized during the years she'd been away at school. "You eat the last of the cereal again?" he asked, but his tone suggested this wasn't really about cereal. Maya shook her head. "I bought groceries yesterday. There's a new box in the cabinet." Derek's jaw tightened, and she could see the vein in his temple starting to throb, a warning sign she'd learned to recognize in childhood. "Don't smart-mouth me, Maya. I'm not in the mood." "I'm not smart-mouthing you. I'm just telling you where the cereal is." For a moment, the only sound was the radiator's persistent clanking and the wind outside. Maya wrapped her hands around her coffee mug, feeling the warmth seep into her palms, and tried to project calm. This was just Derek being Derek, stressed from work, taking it out on whoever was closest. It would pass. Then she heard the key in the lock, and her heart sank. Emma Chen, no relation, just one of those coincidences that had seemed cute when Derek first introduced them, pushed through the door with her arms full of shopping bags. At 25, she was petite and pretty, in a way that made Maya think of those old Hollywood starlets their grandmother used to watch on late-night television. Her long black hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and she wore the kind of carefully coordinated outfit that suggested she'd put thought into how she looked, even for a trip to the grocery store. "Sorry I'm late," Emma said, setting the bags on the counter. "The line at Trader Joe's was insane, and then I had to stop and—" "Where the hell have you been?" Derek's voice cut through her explanation like a whip. Emma's smile faltered, and Maya watched her shoulders tense. "I told you, I went to get groceries. We were out of— I've been calling you for 2 hours. My phone died." Emma's voice was getting smaller, more apologetic. "I forgot to charge it last night and—" "Bullshit." Derek stepped closer, and Maya could see the familiar signs. The way he puffed out his chest, the way his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "You were probably off somewhere with your little friends, talking about me behind my back." "Derek, no, I wasn't." "Don't lie to me, Emma. I can't stand liars." Maya set down her coffee mug and cleared her throat. "Maybe we should all just— Stay out of this, Maya." Derek's eyes never left Emma's face. "This is between me and my girlfriend." But Maya couldn't stay out of it. She'd tried that approach before, back when they were kids, and Derek would take his anger out on her when their parents weren't around. She'd learned to make herself small, to disappear into corners and closets, to pretend she didn't see the bruises on her mother's arms or hear the arguments that echoed through their childhood home late at night. "Emma, maybe you should go home for tonight," Maya said, keeping her voice gentle. "Give everyone a chance to cool down." Emma's eyes darted between Maya and Derek, and Maya could see the calculation happening, the same calculation she'd watched her mother make 1,000 times. Stay and face the storm, or leave and face the consequences later. "She's not going anywhere," Derek said. "We need to talk." "Derek, please." Emma's voice was barely a whisper now. "I'm sorry about my phone. I should have..." "You should have what?" "Remembered that you have a boyfriend who worries about you? Remembered that you're not some single girl who can just disappear whenever she wants?" Maya watched Derek's face transform, the way it always did when he was building up to something. His eyes went cold, and his mouth set in a hard line that she remembered from childhood, the expression he wore right before he'd shove her into a wall or twist her arm behind her back and tell her it was her fault for being so sensitive. "You know what your problem is, Emma?" Derek's voice was quieter now, but that only made it more dangerous. "You're just like my sister here. Too loud when nobody wants to hear you, and too soft when you need to speak up." Maya's blood went cold. She knew that phrase, had heard it directed at her mother countless times, usually right before the sound of a hand meeting flesh, followed by tears and apologies and promises that it would never happen again. "Derek, don't!" Maya started to stand, but Derek was already moving. "You're both the same," he continued, his voice gaining momentum. "Never satisfied, always wanting more, always making me out to be the bad guy when I'm the one working my ass off to..." The slap came fast and sharp, the sound of it echoing through the small kitchen like a gunshot. Emma's head snapped to the side, and her hand flew to her cheek, her eyes wide with shock and pain. For a moment nobody moved. The wind outside seemed to pause, and even the radiator stopped its clanking. Maya stared at her brother, at the man who'd taught her to ride a bike and helped her with her homework and told her she was smart enough to be anything she wanted to be. The man who'd just hit his girlfriend with the same casual cruelty their father had once shown their mother. "Emma," Derek said, his voice already shifting into the apologetic tone Maya remembered so well. "Baby, I'm sorry. I didn't mean..." "Yes, you did." Maya's voice cut through his apology like a blade. She stood up slowly, her legs shaking but her voice steady. "You meant every bit of it." Derek turned to her, and for a split second she saw something like fear in his eyes. "Maya, you don't understand. I understand perfectly." She moved toward Emma, who was still standing frozen by the counter, her hand pressed to her reddening cheek. "I understand that you're exactly like him." "Like who?" "Like Dad." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with years of shared history and carefully buried secrets. Derek's face went white, then red, then white again. "Don't you dare!" He used to say the same thing about Mom, that she was too loud and too soft, that she never knew when to shut up or when to speak up, that she was the problem, not him. Maya reached for Emma's hand, but the other woman pulled away, still staring at Derek with a mixture of love and terror that Maya recognized all too well. "This is different," Derek said, but his voice lacked conviction. I would never." "You just did." Maya turned to Emma, who was looking back and forth between the siblings like she was watching a tennis match. "Emma, you need to leave. Now." "She's not going anywhere," Derek said, but Maya could hear the desperation creeping into his voice. "This is between us. You don't get to... I get to whatever I want in my own home. This is my home too." "Not anymore." The words came out before Maya could stop them, but once they were out, she realized she meant them. Every single one. Derek stared at her, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "You can't kick me out. My name's on the lease too. Then I'll leave." "Maya, no." Emma's voice was barely a whisper. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." Maya looked at her brother, at the man she'd once looked up to despite everything, and felt something break inside her chest. "I can't watch this happen again." She turned and walked toward her bedroom, her legs feeling like they were made of lead. Behind her, she could hear Derek trying to apologize to Emma, his voice taking on that wheedling tone she remembered from childhood. The voice he used when he was trying to convince someone that what they'd seen wasn't what had really happened. Maya's room was small and cramped, with barely enough space for a twin bed and a dresser she'd bought at a thrift store. Her clothes were still in the duffel bag she'd brought from her dorm room, and her few possessions were scattered across the dresser top. A picture of her grandmother, a small cactus in a painted pot, the diploma she'd worked so hard to earn. She could hear Derek's voice rising in the kitchen, then Emma's crying, then Derek's voice again, softer now, more persuasive. The sound of makeup, of promises, of lies wrapped up in declarations of love. Maya grabbed her duffel bag and started stuffing her clothes into it, her hands shaking with adrenaline, and something else, something that felt like freedom and terror all mixed together. She had her savings account, the one Derek didn't know about, with the money she'd been putting aside for a security deposit on her own place. It wasn't much, but it was something. She was zipping up the bag when she heard the front door slam again, followed by Derek's footsteps in the hallway. He knocked on her door, gently at first, then more insistently. "Maya, come on, open up. Let's talk about this." She didn't answer. "Maya, I know you're upset, but you're overreacting. It was just a slap. It's not like I beat her up or anything. Just a slap." Maya closed her eyes and saw her mother's face, heard her mother's voice making the same kinds of excuses. It was just a push. He didn't mean it. He was having a bad day. "He loves me, really. Maya, she's fine. She's not even mad about it." "Are you, baby?" Maya could hear Emma's voice through the door, muffled and shaky. "I'm fine, Maya, really. It was just, we were both upset." Maya shouldered her bag and opened the door. Derek was standing in the hallway, his face flushed and his hair disheveled. Behind him, Emma hovered near the kitchen doorway, her arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold something in. "I'm leaving," Maya said. "Don't be ridiculous. Where are you going to go? You don't have anywhere. I'll figure it out." "Maya, please," Derek's voice cracked, and for a moment she could see the little boy he'd once been, the one who'd crawled into her bed during thunderstorms, who'd cried when their father left, who'd promised her that he'd never let anyone hurt her again. "Don't leave me." The plea almost broke her resolve. Almost. But then she looked past him to Emma, who was still standing with her arms wrapped around herself, and Maya could see the future stretching out before them, the apologies and the promises, the good times that would make Emma think maybe it was just a one-time thing, the gradual escalation as Derek's need for control grew stronger and Emma's resistance grew weaker. "I'm sorry," Maya said, and she meant it. "I can't watch this happen again." She pushed past Derek and walked toward the front door, her bag heavy on her shoulder. Emma stepped forward as if to say something, but Maya shook her head. "You have my number," she said. "When you're ready to leave, call me." "Maya, wait." But Maya was already opening the door, stepping out into the Chicago winter night. The cold hit her like a physical blow, and she pulled her coat tighter as she walked down the stairs and out onto the street. The wind was brutal, cutting through her clothes and making her eyes water. She walked to the corner and stood under the streetlight, pulling out her phone. She could call her friend Jessica, maybe crash on her couch for a few days, or she could call her grandmother in California, though the thought of explaining everything felt impossible. Instead, she opened her Maps app and started walking toward the Greyhound station downtown. It was a long walk, but she needed the time to think, to process what had just happened, to figure out what came next. The streets of Chicago stretched out before her, familiar and foreign at the same time. She'd grown up here, but she'd never really belonged here, not in the way that other people seemed to belong to their hometowns. She'd always felt like she was waiting for something, some sign that it was time to move on, to start over somewhere else. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was the sign she'd been waiting for. As she walked, Maya thought about Emma, about the look in her eyes when Derek had slapped her. She thought about her mother, about all the times she'd tried to convince herself that things would get better, that love was worth the pain, that she could change him if she just tried hard enough. She thought about Derek, about the brother she'd once idolized, and wondered when he'd become someone she couldn't recognize. Or maybe she'd always known what he was capable of, had just chosen not to see it. The Greyhound station was a bright oasis in the darkness, its fluorescent lights spilling out onto the sidewalk like a promise. Maya pushed through the doors and was immediately hit by the smell of coffee and cleaning supplies and something else. Something that reminded her of journeys and new beginnings and the possibility of escape. She approached the counter where a tired-looking woman in a blue uniform was reading a paperback novel. "Can I help you?" the woman asked without looking up from her book. Maya looked at the departure board, at all the cities and towns and possibilities stretching out before her. Portland, Oregon, Austin, Texas, Denver, Colorado. Places she'd never been, places where nobody knew her story or her family or the weight of history she carried on her shoulders. "I need a ticket," Maya said. "Where to?" Maya looked at the board again, then at the woman behind the counter, who was finally looking at her with mild interest. "Somewhere warm," Maya said. "Somewhere I can start over." The woman nodded, as if this was a perfectly reasonable request, as if she heard it every day. "Austin leaves in 2 hours, Phoenix in 3, San Diego in 4. Maya thought about California, about her grandmother's stories of orange groves and ocean air and second chances. She thought about putting an entire continent between herself and the sound of Derek's voice, the memory of Emma's frightened eyes, the ghosts of her childhood that seemed to follow her everywhere she went. "San Diego," she said, "one way." The Greyhound bus pulled away from Chicago at 3:47 a.m., its diesel engine rumbling like a mechanical heartbeat as the city lights faded into the darkness behind them. Maya pressed her face against the window, watching the familiar skyline disappear, feeling something inside her chest loosen with every mile that passed. She'd chosen a seat near the back, away from the handful of other passengers who'd boarded at this ungodly hour. Most of them looked like they had their own stories to tell. A woman in a nurse's uniform heading home from a late shift. An elderly man clutching a manila envelope like it contained his life's work. A young couple sharing earbuds and speaking in hushed Spanish. Maya pulled out her phone and saw 3 missed calls from Derek, 2 from Emma, and a string of text messages that started apologetic and gradually grew more angry. She turned the phone off and shoved it into her bag. Whatever they had to say, she wasn't ready to hear it. The bus made its first stop in Des Moines, just as the sun was coming up, painting the Iowa sky in shades of pink and gold that Maya had never noticed before. She bought a cup of coffee from a vending machine and stood outside the station, breathing in air that smelled different from Chicago, cleaner somehow, with a hint of farmland and possibility. First time on a Greyhound. Maya turned to find a woman about her age, maybe a little older, with short-cropped blonde hair and kind eyes. She was wearing jeans and a University of Colorado sweatshirt, and there was something about her that immediately put Maya at ease. "Is it that obvious?" Maya asked. The woman smiled. "You've got that deer in the headlights look. I'm Sarah, by the way. Sarah Mitchell. Maya Chen. Nice to meet you, Maya. Where you headed?" "San Diego. You?" "Denver. Been visiting my sister in Chicago." Sarah took a sip of her coffee and made a face. "God, this stuff is terrible. You'd think after all these years, they'd figure out how to make decent coffee at bus stations." Maya laughed, and it felt strange. She couldn't remember the last time she'd laughed with a stranger. "I'm starting to think terrible coffee is part of the authentic travel experience." Probably right about that. Sarah studied Maya's face with the kind of careful attention that suggested she was good at reading people. Running away from something or towards something? The question was direct but not unkind, and Maya found herself answering honestly. "Both, I think." Sarah nodded as if this made perfect sense. "Those are the best kind of trips, the ones where you're not sure what you're looking for until you find it." They climbed back onto the bus together, and Sarah slid into the seat next to Maya without asking. Normally, Maya would have minded the intrusion. She'd always been protective of her personal space, especially when she was feeling vulnerable. But there was something about Sarah that felt safe, uncomplicated in a way that Maya wasn't used to. "So what's your story?" Sarah asked as the bus pulled back onto the highway. "If you don't mind me asking." Maya considered deflecting, giving one of those polite non-answers that kept people at arm's length. But something about the anonymity of the bus, the temporary nature of their connection, made her want to tell the truth. "I left my brother," she said. "He hit his girlfriend, and I couldn't watch it happen again." Sarah's expression grew serious. "Again? My dad used to hit my mom. My brother swore he'd never be like that, but..." Maya shrugged, trying to make the gesture casual, but her shoulders felt heavy with the weight of it. "I'm sorry," Sarah said, and her voice carried the kind of understanding that suggested she'd seen her share of difficult family situations. That must have been really hard. The hard part is knowing that she's probably still there. Emma, his girlfriend. She's probably convinced herself that it was just a one-time thing, that he didn't mean it, that she can fix him. "You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved," Sarah said quietly. "Took me a long time to learn that lesson." Maya looked at her new companion, sensing there was more to that statement than casual wisdom. "Personal experience? My mom. She stayed with my stepdad for 12 years, always making excuses for why he drank, why he got angry, why it was somehow her fault when he knocked her around. I tried everything, talking to her, getting her pamphlets about domestic violence, even calling the police once." Sarah's voice grew distant. "Nothing worked until she was ready to leave on her own." "Did she ever leave?" "Yeah, eventually. But it took her a lot longer than it should have." Sarah turned to look out the window at the passing Iowa farmland. "She lives in Phoenix now, actually. Has a little apartment with a garden, takes pottery classes, dates a guy who brings her flowers every Friday. It's like she's a completely different person." Maya felt a flutter of hope in her chest. "Really? Really? People can change, Maya. They can start over, but they have to want it badly enough to do the work." They rode in comfortable silence for a while, watching the landscape change from Iowa cornfields to Kansas wheat fields to the vast expanse of Colorado plains. Maya dozed fitfully, waking up as they pulled into Denver just as the sun was setting behind the Rocky Mountains. "This is my stop," Sarah said, gathering her things. "But before I go..." She pulled out a pen and wrote something on a napkin. "That's my number. If you ever need someone to talk to, or if you just want to check in, don't hesitate to call." Maya took the napkin, feeling oddly emotional. "Thank you for everything. Take care of yourself, Maya. And remember, you did the right thing." Leaving took courage. Maya watched Sarah disappear into the Denver station, then settled back into her seat for the final leg of the journey. The bus filled up with new passengers, a mix of tourists and locals, students and workers, people carrying their own stories and destinations. As they crossed into Utah, Maya turned her phone back on. The messages from Derek had stopped, but there were 2 new ones from Emma. "I'm sorry you had to see that. Derek feels terrible. He's not usually like this. I think he's just stressed about work." Maya stared at the messages for a long time, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. Part of her wanted to call Emma, to explain why she'd left, to try to convince her that she deserved better. But she could already hear Sarah's voice in her head. "You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved." Instead, she typed back, "You have my number. When you're ready to talk, I'm here." She turned the phone off again and watched the Utah desert roll by in the moonlight. The landscape was alien and beautiful, all red rock and endless sky, so different from the flat plains of Illinois that it felt like another planet. Maya thought about her grandmother, who'd made a similar journey 50 years ago, leaving behind a difficult marriage and an uncertain future to start over in California. She'd been about Maya's age then, with 2 young children and barely enough money for bus fare. She'd worked 3 jobs, gone to night school, eventually built a life that was entirely her own. "You've got the same stubborn streak," her grandmother had always told her. "It'll serve you well someday." Maya had never understood what she meant until now. The bus pulled into Salt Lake City at midnight, and Maya bought a sandwich from a vending machine and called her grandmother from a payphone in the station. The phone rang 4 times before a familiar voice answered. "Hello? Grandma, it's Maya. Maya, sweetheart, what a wonderful surprise. How are you, dear?" Maya closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the last 24 hours pressing down on her shoulders. "I'm okay, Grandma. I'm on a bus, actually, coming to California." "Oh, my. Is everything all right?" Maya found herself telling her grandmother everything, about Derek, about Emma, about the decision to leave Chicago. Her grandmother listened without interruption, making the occasional soft sound of understanding. "You did the right thing, sweetheart," her grandmother said when Maya finished. "It takes courage to walk away from family, especially when you love them. Do you think he'll change? Derek, I mean." Her grandmother was quiet for a moment. "I think some people are capable of change, and some people aren't. The trick is knowing which kind you're dealing with and not wasting your life trying to fix someone who doesn't want to be fixed." Maya thought about Derek, about the brother she'd looked up to despite everything, about the man who'd hit Emma with such casual cruelty. "I don't know which kind he is." "Then you did the right thing by leaving. Sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling their worst behavior. Would it be okay if I stayed with you for a while, just until I figure out what I'm doing?" "Of course, dear, I'd love to have you. How long until you get here?" Maya looked at the departure board. "About 12 hours. I'll make your favorite pancakes for breakfast, the ones with the blueberries." Maya smiled, feeling something warm and hopeful spreading through her chest. "Thank you, Grandma." "Don't thank me yet. I'm going to put you to work. The garden needs weeding, and I've been meaning to reorganize the garage. I'd like that, actually. I'd like to do something useful." "Oh, sweetheart, you're always useful. You just need to believe it." Maya hung up the phone and walked back to the bus, feeling lighter than she had in months. The other passengers were settling in for the long overnight haul to California, and Maya found herself looking forward to the journey instead of dreading it. As the bus pulled out of Salt Lake City and into the Nevada desert, Maya pressed her face against the window and watched the stars appear in the vast darkness above. They were brighter here than they'd ever been in Chicago, clearer and more numerous, like someone had scattered diamonds across black velvet. She thought about Sarah's words about people being capable of change, about her grandmother's similar journey decades ago, about the possibility of starting over in a place where nobody knew her story or her family or the weight of history she carried on her shoulders. The desert stretched out endlessly in all directions, empty and beautiful and full of possibility. Maya closed her eyes and let the rhythm of the bus lull her towards sleep, dreaming of California sunshine and her grandmother's pancakes and the chance to build a life that was entirely her own. Maya woke to the sound of the bus driver's voice crackling over the intercom. "San Diego, California, end of the line." She'd been dreaming about Chicago, about Derek and Emma and the sound of that slap echoing through the small kitchen, but the dream faded as she blinked awake to California sunshine streaming through the bus window. The light was different here, golden and warm even at 8 in the morning, and the air that rushed in when the doors opened smelled of ocean and eucalyptus, and something else she couldn't quite identify. Her grandmother was waiting at the bottom of the bus steps, exactly as Maya had pictured her. 5 feet tall, in her sensible shoes, silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing a floral print dress that somehow managed to look both practical and elegant. At 73, Rose Chen moved with the careful grace of someone who'd learned to navigate the world on her own terms. "There's my girl," she said, pulling Maya into a hug that smelled like lavender and home. "You look tired, sweetheart." "I feel tired," Maya admitted, shouldering her duffel bag, "but good tired, like I've been somewhere important." Rose smiled, the kind of smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes and made Maya remember why she'd always felt safer with her grandmother than anywhere else. "Well, you have. Come on, let's get you fed and settled." Rose's house was a small craftsman bungalow in the Kensington neighborhood with a front porch that caught the morning sun and a backyard garden that looked like something out of a magazine. Maya had visited twice before, but she'd forgotten how different it felt from the cramped apartments and harsh winters of Chicago. Everything here seemed to breathe. The rooms were filled with light, the windows were always open, and there was a sense of space and possibility that made Maya's shoulders relax for the first time in months. "Your room's just how you left it," Rose said, leading Maya down the hallway. "I've been using it for storage, but I cleared it out yesterday." The room was small but charming, with built-in bookshelves and a window that looked out onto the garden. There was a twin bed covered in a quilt that Rose had made herself, and a small desk where Maya could imagine herself writing or reading or planning whatever came next. "It's perfect," Maya said, setting her bag on the bed. "Grandma, I can't thank you enough." "Nonsense. Family takes care of family. Besides, I could use the company. Gets quiet around here sometimes." They had breakfast on the back porch, Rose's famous blueberry pancakes and coffee that actually tasted good, unlike the terrible stuff Maya had been drinking at bus stations. The morning was warm, but not hot, with a gentle breeze that carried the sound of birds and the distant hum of traffic. "So," Rose said, settling into her chair with her coffee cup, "tell me about your plans." Maya cut another bite of pancake, buying herself time to think. "Honestly, I don't have any plans. I just knew I needed to get out of Chicago." "That's a plan," Rose said matter-of-factly. "Sometimes the most important decision is knowing when to leave." "Is that what you did when you left Grandpa?" Rose was quiet for a moment, looking out at her garden where roses climbed a trellis and tomatoes grew in neat rows. "Your grandfather was a good man in many ways, but he had ideas about what a wife should be, what a woman's place was, and I had different ideas. Mom never told me much about why you left. Your mother was very young when it happened, and she loved her father despite everything. I didn't want to poison that relationship for her." Rose took a sip of her coffee. "But yes, I left, packed up you kids, and drove west with $300 and a prayer. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but it was also the best thing." Maya studied her grandmother's face, trying to imagine her as a young woman with two small children, making the same kind of leap of faith that Maya had just made. "Were you scared?" "Terrified. But I was more scared of staying, of watching my children grow up thinking that was what marriage looked like, what love looked like." Rose reached over and squeezed Maya's hand. "You did the right thing, sweetheart, for yourself and for that young woman. Emma. Her name's Emma. Emma, you planted a seed, even if she's not ready to see it yet. Sometimes that's all we can do." Maya felt tears prick at her eyes. "I keep thinking about her, wondering if she's okay, if Derek's gotten worse." "You can't control what other people do, Maya. You can only control your own choices, and you chose to walk away from a situation that wasn't healthy for anyone involved." Maya nodded, wiping her eyes with her napkin. "So what now? I have some savings, but not much. I need to find a job, figure out where I want to live long term. One step at a time. First, you need to rest. Really rest. When was the last time you slept through the night without worrying about something?" Maya thought about it. "I honestly can't remember." "Then that's where we start. You're welcome to stay here as long as you need to. I've got plenty of projects that could use a young person's energy, and you can help me with the garden. In the meantime, you can figure out what you want to do with your life." "What if I don't know what I want to do?" Rose smiled. "Then you'll try different things until you find something that fits. That's what your 20s are for. Experimenting, making mistakes, figuring out who you are when nobody's watching." Maya spent the next few days in a kind of suspended animation, sleeping late and helping Rose with household projects. She weeded the garden, organized the garage, painted the back fence, and slowly felt some of the tension leave her body. The work was physical and mindless in a way that felt therapeutic, and Rose never pushed her to talk about Chicago or make plans for the future. On her 4th day in San Diego, Maya was pruning roses in the front yard when a woman about her age jogged past, then stopped and jogged back. "Are you Rose's granddaughter?" the woman asked, breathing hard but smiling. "She mentioned you might be visiting." Maya stood up, pulling off her gardening gloves. "Yes, I'm Maya. Are you a neighbor?" "Sophie Martinez. I live 2 doors down." Sophie was pretty in an outdoorsy way, with long dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, and the kind of tan that suggested she spent a lot of time in the sun. "Your grandmother talks about you all the time. She's so proud of you." "She is?" "Oh yeah. She goes on and on about how you're going to change the world with your social work degree." Sophie grinned. "I'm a social worker too, actually. I work with at-risk youth downtown. It's challenging work, but I love it." Maya felt a flutter of interest. "Really? What kind of programs?" "Mostly intervention and prevention. We work with kids who've been in the system, help them transition to independence, teach them life skills, connect them with resources." Sophie's eyes lit up as she talked. "It's not always easy, but when you see a kid turn their life around, when you see them graduate high school or get their first apartment or reconcile with their family, it makes all the hard days worth it." "That sounds amazing. Are you looking for work? Because we're actually hiring right now. One of our caseworkers just took a job in Sacramento, and we're looking for someone with your kind of background." Maya's heart started beating faster. I might be interested. I mean, I'm still figuring things out, but tell you what," Sophie said, pulling out her phone. "Why don't I give you my number? If you want to come by the center sometime, I can show you around, introduce you to the team. No pressure, just a chance to see what we do." Maya took Sophie's number and watched her jog away, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time: excitement about the future. When she went inside, Rose was waiting with a knowing smile. "Sophie seems nice," Rose said innocently. "Did you set that up?" "I may have mentioned to her that my granddaughter was visiting, and I may have mentioned that she has a social work degree and a good heart." Rose's eyes twinkled. "But the rest was pure coincidence." Maya laughed, shaking her head. "You're incorrigible. I'm helpful. There's a difference." That evening, Maya called Sophie and arranged to visit the youth center the next day. She spent the night reading about the organization online, learning about their programs and their mission, feeling a sense of purpose stirring that she hadn't felt since graduation. The San Diego Youth Alliance was housed in a converted warehouse in the downtown area, with bright murals covering the exterior walls and solar panels gleaming on the roof. Inside, Maya found a bustling hub of activity, teenagers playing pool and video games, younger kids doing homework at long tables, staff members leading group discussions and one-on-one counseling sessions. "It's organized chaos," Sophie explained, leading Maya through the main room. "We serve about 150 kids on a regular basis, ages 12 to 24. Some are in foster care, some have aged out of the system, some are homeless, some are just struggling with family issues or school or life in general." Maya watched a staff member helping a teenage girl with her math homework, her patience evident as she explained the same concept 3 different ways until something clicked. At another table, a young man was working on a job application with another counselor, carefully filling out each section. "What's the success rate?" Maya asked. "Depends on how you measure success," Sophie said. "If you're talking about kids who graduate high school, find stable housing, stay out of the juvenile justice system, we're running about 70%, which is pretty good for this population. But sometimes success looks different. Sometimes it's a kid learning to trust an adult for the first time, or developing the confidence to leave an abusive relationship, or just staying alive long enough to figure out who they want to be." Maya felt a familiar ache in her chest, thinking about all the kids who might be sitting in their own versions of her childhood kitchen, watching violence unfold and feeling powerless to stop it. "I'd like to apply," she said. "For the position, I mean." Sophie's face lit up. "Really? That's fantastic. Let me introduce you to Maria. She's our program director." Maria Gonzalez was a woman in her 40s, with kind eyes and the kind of presence that immediately commanded respect. She interviewed Maya in a small office overlooking the main room, asking thoughtful questions about her experience, her philosophy about working with young people, her reasons for wanting to work in social services. "Tell me about a time when you had to make a difficult decision," Maria said, leaning back in her chair. Maya thought about lying, about giving some sanitized version of a story that wouldn't reveal too much about her personal life. But something about Maria's direct gaze made her want to tell the truth. "3 weeks ago, I watched my brother hit his girlfriend," Maya said, "and I had to decide whether to stay and try to help her, or leave and risk abandoning her to a situation I knew would only get worse." Maria's expression didn't change. "What did you decide?" "I left. I told her she could call me when she was ready, and then I left Chicago and came here." "Do you regret that decision?" Maya considered the question seriously. "I regret that she wasn't ready to leave with me, but I don't regret leaving. I couldn't be complicit in what was happening, even by staying silent." Maria nodded slowly. Working with at-risk youth means making those kinds of impossible choices on a regular basis. Sometimes you have to step back and let people make their own mistakes, even when you can see the train wreck coming. It's one of the hardest parts of this job. I understand that, but I also understand what it feels like to be powerless, to feel trapped in a situation you can't control. If I can help even one kid find a way out. "When can you start?" Maya blinked. "I'm sorry?" "The job. When can you start? I'd like to offer you the position." Maya felt tears spring to her eyes. "Really? Really? You've got the education, the empathy, and most importantly, you've got the lived experience. You understand what these kids are going through because you've been there yourself." Maya thought about the long journey from Chicago to San Diego, about the conversation with Sarah on the bus, about her grandmother's stories of starting over. "I can start whenever you need me. How about Monday? Sophie can show you the ropes and we'll get you set up with your first caseload." Maya walked out of the youth center feeling like she was floating. The sun was setting over San Diego, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and the air was warm and full of possibility. She called Rose from the parking lot. "I got the job," she said as soon as her grandmother answered. "Of course you did. I never doubted it for a minute. Grandma, I think this is it. What I'm supposed to be doing." "I think you're right, sweetheart. Sometimes we have to go through the darkness to find the light." Maya drove back to Kensington with the windows down, letting the warm California air wash over her. For the first time since leaving Chicago, she allowed herself to imagine a future, a real future, with a job she cared about and a place she could call home. That night, she finally turned her phone back on and found a message from Emma that had been sent 2 days earlier. "He did it again. I'm scared, Maya. Can you help me?" Maya's hands shook as she dialed Emma's number. It rang 4 times before a shaky voice answered. "Maya? Emma, I'm here. Are you okay? Where are you?" "I'm at my sister's house. I left this morning while Derek was at work." Emma's voice was barely a whisper. "I don't know what to do. I don't have anywhere to go, and he keeps calling, saying he's going to come get me." "Emma, listen to me. You're safe right now, okay? You're with your sister and you made the right choice by leaving. But what if he finds me? What if he gets angry and then you call the police? Do you understand me? If he shows up at your sister's house, if he threatens you, if he so much as drives by, you call 911. Maya talked to Emma for over an hour, helping her make a safety plan, connecting her with local domestic violence resources, reminding her over and over that none of this was her fault. When they finally hung up, Maya felt emotionally drained, but also strangely hopeful. She'd found her purpose, not just in the job at the youth center, but in something larger, in being the person she'd needed when she was younger, in offering the kind of support she'd wished someone had given her mother, in helping people find the courage to choose themselves over the familiar comfort of dysfunction. Maya walked out onto the back porch, where Rose was reading a book by the light of a small lamp. "How's Emma?" Rose asked without looking up from her book. "Scared, but she left him." "That's something." "That's everything," Rose corrected. "The first step is always the hardest." Maya settled into the chair next to her grandmother, looking out at the garden where roses climbed toward the stars. "Grandma, can I ask you something? Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd stayed? If you'd tried to make it work with Grandpa?" Rose closed her book and looked at Maya with the kind of serious expression she reserved for important conversations. Every day for the first year, but then I realized I was asking the wrong question. What do you mean? I was asking, what if I'd stayed, when I should have been asking, what if I hadn't left? And the answer to that question was clear. You and your mother would have grown up thinking that was what love looked like, that women were supposed to make themselves small, that men were allowed to control and intimidate and hurt the people they claimed to care about. Maya nodded, thinking about Derek, about the way he'd transformed from the brother she'd loved into someone she barely recognized. Breaking a cycle is never easy, Rose continued, but sometimes it's the most important thing we can do. Not just for ourselves, but for the next generation. Maya thought about the kids she would meet on Monday, about the young people who were struggling with their own impossible choices, their own family dysfunction, their own dreams of something better. I think I'm ready, she said. Ready for what? To build something new, to be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. Rose smiled, reaching over to squeeze Maya's hand. I think you are too, sweetheart. I think you are too. 6 months later, Maya stood in the main room of the San Diego Youth Alliance, watching 17-year-old Marcus Thompson practice his job interview skills with Sophie. Marcus had been one of her first cases, a kid who'd aged out of foster care at 18, with nowhere to go, and an anger that seemed to burn just beneath the surface of everything he said and did. Tell me about a time when you had to overcome a challenge, Sophie was saying, her voice patient and encouraging. Marcus shifted in his chair, his jaw tight with the effort of staying calm. I don't know. Life's been pretty much one big challenge. That's actually a great starting point, Maya said, stepping closer to their table. But let's get specific. What's one particular challenge you faced, and how did you handle it? Marcus looked at Maya with the kind of trust that had taken months to build. In the beginning, he'd been suspicious of everyone, convinced that any adult who claimed to want to help him was either lying or had some hidden agenda. But slowly, through consistent presence and genuine care, Maya had helped him learn to believe that not all adults would disappoint him. I guess when I turned 18 and had to leave my last foster home, Marcus said slowly. I didn't have anywhere to go, and I was scared I'd end up on the streets, but instead of just giving up, I came here and asked for help. And what happened when you asked for help? Sophie prompted. Maya helped me find a transitional housing program. She drove me to the interview and helped me fill out all the paperwork. And when I got accepted, she helped me move in and figure out how to budget my money so I could afford groceries and bus fare. Maya felt the familiar warmth that came with these moments, when she could see how far one of her kids had come, how much they'd grown in confidence and self-advocacy. Marcus now had a part-time job at a local grocery store, was taking community college classes in the evenings, and had even started dating a girl from his English class. That's a perfect answer, Sophie said. It shows initiative, problem-solving skills, and the ability to ask for help when you need it. Employers love to hear that kind of thing. Marcus grinned, and Maya was struck by how different he looked when he smiled, younger somehow, less guarded. Thanks. I've been practicing. It shows. You're going to do great tomorrow. Maya watched Marcus walk away, his shoulders straighter than they'd been when she first met him, and felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This was what success looked like, not dramatic transformations or miraculous turnarounds, but small, steady progress toward a life that was sustainable and self-directed. Her phone buzzed with a text message, and Maya glanced down to see Emma's name on the screen. 6 months, clean and sober. Starting nursing school in the fall. Thank you for not giving up on me. Maya smiled, remembering the long phone calls in those first few weeks after Emma had left Derek. The times when Emma had wanted to go back. The careful process of helping her see that love shouldn't hurt, that she deserved better than walking on eggshells in her own relationship. Emma had moved back to Ohio to live with her parents while she got back on her feet. It hadn't been easy. There had been relapses, moments of doubt, times when the familiar dysfunction had seemed easier than the uncertain work of building something new. But Emma had stuck with it, found a therapist, joined a support group, slowly rebuilt her sense of self-worth. Derek had tried to contact Maya a few times in those first months, wanting to know where Emma was, demanding that Maya stay out of his business. Maya had blocked his number after the third call, but not before making it clear that Emma was safe and that he needed to respect her decision to leave. "Good news?" Sophie asked, appearing at Maya's elbow. "The best news. Emma, remember I told you about Derek's girlfriend? She just hit 6 months sober, and she's starting nursing school." "That's incredible. You must be so proud." Maya nodded, but her expression grew thoughtful. "I keep thinking about all the people we don't reach, though. All the kids who don't make it to places like this, all the women who stay in bad relationships because they don't know there's another way. You can't save everyone, Maya. We've talked about this. I know. But sometimes I wonder if there's more we could be doing. More prevention, more early intervention." Sophie smiled, recognizing the look on Maya's face. "You're getting that expression again. The one you get when you're about to propose some ambitious new program." Maya laughed. "Maybe I am. I've been thinking about starting a support group specifically for young women who've witnessed domestic violence. Kids like me, who grew up in homes where violence was normalized, who might not even realize how it's affected them." "That's a great idea. Have you talked to Maria about it?" "Not yet. I wanted to do some research first, see what's already out there, figure out how we could make it work with our current programming." Amaya had been at the youth center for 6 months now, and she'd thrown herself into the work with a passion that sometimes surprised her. She'd always known she wanted to help people, but she hadn't understood until now how deeply personal this work would feel, how much her own experiences would inform her approach to helping others. Her caseload included 23 young people ranging in age from 14 to 22. Some were dealing with homelessness, some with aging out of foster care, some with family conflict or mental health issues or substance abuse. Each case was different, but Maya found common threads: the need to be heard, the hunger for stability, the desire to believe that change was possible. "Maya?" She turned to find Maria standing behind her, holding a manila folder. "Can I see you in my office for a minute?" Maya followed Maria down the hall, wondering if she was in trouble for something. In the 6 months she'd been working here, she'd pushed boundaries a few times, staying late to help a kid in crisis, taking on cases that technically weren't her responsibility, advocating a little too forcefully with other agencies on behalf of her clients. "Have a seat," Maria said, closing the door behind them. "I wanted to talk to you about your 6-month evaluation." Maya's stomach clenched. "Is everything okay?" Maria smiled, settling behind her desk. "Everything's more than okay. Maya, in my 20 years doing this work, I've rarely seen someone take to it the way you have. Your clients trust you, your colleagues respect you, and you've brought a level of insight and empathy to this job that's really remarkable." Maya felt relief wash over her. "Thank you. That means a lot. I'm not just saying this to make you feel good. I'm saying it because I want to offer you something." Maria opened the folder and pulled out a sheet of paper. "We've been awarded a grant to expand our family intervention program, working with families before kids end up in the system, providing support and resources to help them stay together safely. It's a 2-year pilot program, and we need someone to lead it." Maya's eyes widened. "You want me to lead a program?" "I want you to design and lead a program. You'd have a team of 3 caseworkers, a budget for programming and resources, and the freedom to develop interventions based on what you think will work best." Maria leaned forward. "It's a big responsibility, and it would mean more hours, more stress, more difficult cases, but I think you're ready for it." Maya thought about Marcus, about Emma, about all the kids and families who might benefit from early intervention, from support before crisis hit. What would the timeline look like? "We'd want to launch in 3 months. You'd spend the next few weeks transitioning your current caseload, then focus on program development and staff hiring." "Can I think about it?" "Of course. Take your time. But Maya?" Maria smiled. "I hope you say yes. I think you could really make a difference with this." Maya walked out of Maria's office feeling like her head was spinning. 6 months ago, she'd been living in her brother's apartment, watching him repeat the same patterns of abuse she'd grown up with. Now, she was being offered the chance to lead a program that could help prevent other families from going through the same thing. She drove home to Rose's house, her mind racing with possibilities. The family intervention program could include support groups for domestic violence survivors, parenting classes that focused on healthy relationship dynamics, counseling for children who'd witnessed violence, resources for people trying to leave abusive situations. "You look like someone who's had an interesting day," Rose said when Maya walked through the front door. Maya found her grandmother in the kitchen, preparing dinner with the kind of methodical care that had always been comforting. "They offered me a promotion. Well, sort of. A chance to lead a new program." "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Tell me about it." Maya explained the opportunity while she helped Rose set the table, her excitement growing as she talked through the possibilities. Rose listened with the kind of focused attention she'd always given Maya's dreams and worries. "It sounds like exactly the kind of work you're meant to do," Rose said when Maya finished, "but I can hear some hesitation in your voice." Maya paused, a handful of silverware in her hand. "It's a big responsibility. What if I'm not ready? What if I mess it up? What if you succeed?" "What?" Rose turned to face her, her expression gentle but serious. "You're so focused on what could go wrong that you're not allowing yourself to imagine what could go right. What if you design a program that helps dozens of families stay together safely? What if you prevent even one child from growing up in a home like the one you grew up in?" Maya felt tears spring to her eyes. "I just keep thinking about Derek, about how someone should have intervened when we were kids, how different things might have been if our family had gotten help instead of just struggling alone. And now you have the chance to be that intervention for other families." Maya nodded, wiping her eyes. "I'm scared, Grandma." "Good. If you weren't scared, I'd be worried about you. Fear means you understand how important this is, how much responsibility you're taking on." Rose reached over and squeezed Maya's hand. "But don't let fear stop you from doing something you're called to do." That evening, Maya sat on the back porch with her laptop, researching family intervention programs and evidence-based practices for preventing domestic violence. The more she read, the more excited she became about the possibilities. Her phone rang around 9 o'clock, and she was surprised to see an unfamiliar Chicago number on the screen. "Hello, Maya? It's Emma. Emma, I got your text earlier. Congratulations on 6 months. That's huge." "Thank you. I wanted to call because I have some news about Derek." Maya's stomach clenched. "What kind of news?" "He's in jail, Maya. He got arrested last week for assault. Apparently he'd been dating someone new, and she called the police when he hit her." Maya closed her eyes, feeling a complicated mix of sadness and relief. "Is she okay? The woman he was with?" "I think so. She pressed charges, which is more than I ever did. I think maybe watching me leave made her realize she didn't have to stay." "How do you feel about it?" Emma was quiet for a moment, sad, but also relieved. Like maybe this is what he needed to finally face what he's been doing. "His lawyer called me, wanted me to testify as a character witness, but I told him no. I told him Derek needs to be held accountable for his actions." Maya felt proud of Emma, of how far she'd come in her ability to set boundaries and prioritize her own well-being. That must have been a difficult decision. It was. But my therapist helped me understand that protecting Derek from consequences isn't the same as loving him, and that I can't help him until he's ready to help himself. That's incredibly wise. I learned it from you, actually. When you left that night, when you refused to enable what was happening, it planted a seed. It took me a while to understand what you were trying to show me, but I got there eventually. Maya felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "I'm so proud of you, Emma, for leaving, for getting sober, for choosing yourself. I couldn't have done it without knowing that someone believed I deserved better. Thank you for that." A days after they hung up, Maya sat in the garden for a long time, thinking about cycles, how they perpetuate, how they break, how one person's courage to walk away could ripple outward in ways they might never fully understand. She thought about Derek sitting in a jail cell, finally facing consequences for his actions. She thought about the woman who'd had the courage to call the police, about Emma finding her strength, about Marcus learning to trust adults, about all the small acts of courage that added up to transformation. Maya opened her laptop and started writing an email to Maria. I would be honored to accept the position leading the family intervention program. I have some ideas about how we might structure it, and I'd love to schedule a meeting to discuss them with you. The next morning, Maya woke early and walked out to the garden, where Rose was already working among the roses. The morning was cool and clear, with the kind of light that made everything look possible. I took the job, Maya said, settling down next to her grandmother in the dirt. Rose smiled without looking up from her pruning. I knew you would. How? Because you're your grandmother's granddaughter, and we don't back down from important work, even when it's scary. Maya laughed, feeling something settle into place inside her chest. A sense of purpose, of belonging, of being exactly where she was meant to be. What are we planting today? Something new, Rose said, handing Maya a small potted plant. I thought we'd try some lavender. It's good for attracting bees, and it smells beautiful when it blooms. Maya took the plant and began digging a hole for it, thinking about growth and new beginnings and the patience required to tend something until it flourished. The work was satisfying in a way that felt both familiar and new, the same combination of hope and hard work that had brought her from Chicago to California, from victim to survivor, to someone who could help others make the same journey. As she worked, Maya thought about the program she would build, about the families she might help, about the children who might grow up in homes where love meant safety instead of fear. She thought about Derek, about the long road toward accountability and change that lay ahead of him. She thought about Emma starting nursing school, building a life based on her own choices rather than someone else's control. And she thought about herself. 24 years old, 3,000 miles from where she'd started, finally understanding that sometimes the most radical thing you can do is refuse to accept that dysfunction is normal, that love should hurt, that you don't deserve better. The lavender plant looked small and fragile in its new home, but Maya could imagine it growing, spreading, filling the garden with its sweet scent, and attracting the bees that would help everything else flourish. Change started small, she'd learned, but with care and patience and the right conditions, it could transform everything. Maya patted the soil around the new plant and sat back on her heels, watching the sun climb higher over the California sky. There was work to be done, programs to build, families to help, young people to support as they learned to believe in their own worth and potential. But for now, in this moment, in this garden with her grandmother, Maya Chen was exactly where she belonged. She'd broken the cycle. She'd chosen herself, and now she could help others do the same. The lavender would bloom in its own time, just as all good things did. Maya was learning to trust in that timing, to believe in growth even when she couldn't see it happening, to have faith that small acts of courage could change everything. She was ready to get to work.